Started here. I want to call the first meeting of the Champlain-Lake George Regional Development Corporation to order. Just to paraphrase, the old bylaws dictated that their members could adopt the bylaws, and subsequently then from the bylaws then could designate a board of directors. According to the existing RDC bylaws, we have one member left from all the members that started in the original charter. That's Harry Booth. The rest have either resigned or not around anymore. So our first order of business is to get that done. We need bylaws adopted, then directors appointed. I'm looking for one director from each county, plus Beth and I, who are automatically members according to both sets of bylaws. And then we'll need to elect board of directors, officers, and go from there. So just a little bit about the RDC. For those who don't know about the RDC, the Regional Development Corporation was established for one purpose and one purpose only. The Regional Development Corporation was designated to borrow money to provide a loan fund from USDA. We borrowed two sums of money, one $500,000, one $750,000, for a total of $1.25 million. That was a loan, and over the course of the past 20 years, we paid off those loans to a certain amount. Existing in that loan fund is about $300,000 for the loans. One thing we're going to have to work on is how we wind down that loan fund. Because as it stands, we have approximately $280,000 owed, and about $280,000 that is we have in loans. Some are good loans, some are quasi-loans, but just the cash flow doesn't allow us to do that. So over the next 6 months, we're going to figure out how to wind it down because we don't know how to make those payments. We're working on it. We've talked to USDA about how we proceed, and we have some ideas, but we're starting on that. So without that, I think that the first part of the business, Harry Booth, what we need is a motion to accept the bylaws, RDC bylaws as written and provided to all the members.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion if we adopt the bylaws as written that are placed in front of you.
I second.
Okay.
I will second it.
So I passed that out. Did anyone have any comments on the bylaws as provided? I got some feedback, mostly just some small language things which we corrected.
Hey Dave, why don't you just tell them where we basically got the bylaws?
Well, the current bylaws we started off with what we had done for the Regional Planning Board. We started that. We looked through all the other bylaws and incorporated the different features that should be there. We streamlined the board of directors from 20 members down to 7. And basically adopted all the other parts that were RDC specific. So. Any comments on the RDC bylaws as provided? Going once, going twice?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ron.
Excuse my not knowing. I'm sure it's here. I'm just looking for it frantically. The members would be one from each county, selected by, recommended and selected by, or selected by each county.
I would like to see these person recommended by the counties. Then the members have to accept that board of directors and vote on those board of directors. One of my preferences is because this is a private this is not a municipal corporation. This is a private corporation. Those that are non-voting members of the RPB are eligible to be directors of the Regional Development Corporation. So I'd like to see as many as we can from the non-voting members to take a little workload off the others who are voting members. So when it comes to a county, I appreciate you take that in consideration. Clarification?
I think so. so that the board will not select to the regional board anyone that has not been recommended by, if the vacancy, for example, were in Warren County, the position would lie vacant until such time as you received a recommendation from Warren County.
That's correct. The new bylaws are written for one from each county, plus I should say the executive director and the chairman of the regional planning board.
And just not to labor on this, but and that individual would be, whoever that individual might be, would be recommended by the body politic, the Warren County, for example, in the same example, Warren County Board of Supervisors, would be recommended by the chairman of the board. I assume it would be by the full board, but maybe it would be recommended by the chair of the board. I don't know. Just if it was a representative, since it's tied to the county, I think that it should be somebody that is recommended by the full board of the county,
Mm-hmm.
because the pathway to that is from the county. I don't know if that fits. I'm just asking the question. Is that
What happens is that under the old bylaws and the new bylaws, all the members of the board of directors of the regional planning board become members of the Regional Development Corporation. Those members would then elect from their bodies who they'd like to see as directors. So I'm flexible either way, whether or not we wanted to wait for county to recommend or choose from our members, since they'll all be represented. I open the question to that. Any preferences?
County's recommended the people for the
Regional Planning Board, correct?
regional planning board, so I don't think they would have problems with somebody from that group moving on to the RDC. Don't see where that would be a problem.
You comfortable with that, Ron?
I am?
Okay.
And I just want clarity on it. Just want to know how it's being done.
Well, thanks. I didn't think of that, but I was thinking about members to directors, so...
I know I'm tedious that way.
Oh, that's all right. Any other omissions, corrections to the bylaws? I'll now accept a resolution to approve those bylaws by the members.
Aye.
You got to give a motion. You can't vote. There's only 3 people who can vote on this: Harry, myself, and because this is the Regional Development Corporation.
Ask who's voting.
Harry made a motion.
I made a motion, yes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carried. Now, congratulations. Everyone who was a director in Regional Planning Board is now a member of the Regional Development Corporation. According to the bylaws, I will now entertain...
What? There's only 7 members. Now we're all members? There's only 7 members.
No, you got 2 different things. You got members and board of directors. You're only members. I can make you director real quick.
You already got plenty of Washington County on there. Get some other counties.
There's got to be one from each county.
We already have one. Harry's doing a great job. We're right behind you.
No, he's a member. I don't know if he wants to be a director.
I told David I would do whatever he asked me to do. I will
help you?
within reason.
All right, I'm going to go down. Can I get a recommendation from each county who they'd like to see on the board? I'm going to start with Hamilton County.
Beth Hunt.
Got to be quicker.
Washington County.
Harry Booth.
Okay. Clinton County.
You're okay with that, Jerry?
Clinton.
Yeah, I guess I will be.
Okay.
Beat by the ball.
Essex County.
Charlie wants me to be.
Okay. And Warren County.
John Struck.
Do you have any other recommendations? I'll send a motion to appoint Beth Hunt, Harry Booth, John Stroh, Pete, and Ron. Dave and Beth. Can I get a motion? Anyone here can make that motion.
I'll move that, Dave.
Dennis Dickinson, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Patty. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Now, out of those people, we needed a appointment, or excuse me, I should say, a motion for someone to be the chairman of the board of that chairperson of the board for the Regional Development Corporation. Out of Beth, Harry, John, myself, Beth, and Ron.
I thought you were automatic.
That was the old bylaws. The new bylaws, I thought I'd leave it to the... Regarding the new bylaws, I would prefer to be selected from that group.
I would move that Dave continue on as chairman of the
I'll
board of
second that.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
You were outvoted.
All right. I need a vice chairman. Any recommendation for vice chairman out of John? The rest left. I prefer, it should be from a different county.
I can make a recommendation. I would recommend that John Scott be elected vice chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Dennis, all in favor?
Aye.
I should ask any other nominations. I have a need for a secretary. I guess we're down to 3 counties, Clinton, Essex, and actually Washington County gets another. Washington County may have another one, or another county may have another one. So let's go with Clinton. Do we do?
I don't think State's interested in being secretary.
Hamilton, anyone. Hamilton, Essex, Washington.
No.
She's not a director. Beth Hunt, that makes sense. She's already secretary of the
I know.
RPB. So I need a motion. Anyone want to make a motion? Dennis? Second? Get a second? Mr. Henke, any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
So we got a secretary, now we need a treasurer. The treasurer can be a non... Al is the treasurer of the RPB. It would make sense to make him treasurer of the RDC.
I would think.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move
Doesn't
that.
have to be. Moved by Pete. Second? Beth? Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
No, I think I need...
I can't even vote against myself. That's not fair.
Got the
Yes,
form
it
of
is.
that done.
Okay, we got all the officers we need. So we got that. What else is next on the list? Other business? I have no other business at this point. Unless Al went... Oh, wait a minute. July abstract. You should have a July abstract. We need a motion to accept the July abstract. One item on it. Can I have such motion? Beth Hunt makes a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Edna. All in favor?
Aye.
Any other business we got to transpire?
Chairman,
Yes.
just a message for the board under the abstract conversation.
Mm-hmm.
After discussion with the interim director, we've discussed some of the charges that have traditionally been charged to the RDC that maybe we're going to run through the operating fund. So we've reclassed $800 worth of like little cable and telephone bills, and we'll be billing the RDC directly for only like legal services and accounting services. The direct cost of that organization is what we'll be paying. So when you see financials, you'll have abstracts from January to June that when you see my abstracts today, you'll have different numbers. It's been adjusted by $800 to put them back in the operating fund, just for point of clarity.
Okay, thank you. One other note of business is that in the loans, I'll get more in loans later. This one has to do with the USDA loans. Specifically, there was a loan given by New Way Lunch where the money was borrowed from other funds and revolving loan funds. That's commingling funds because we shouldn't owe, the USDA shouldn't borrow from the EDA. So we talked to the attorney and found out a way to take and assign that New Way lunch from the USDA to the proper revolving loan fund. So I just want to let you know we did that because you can't commingle funds that way between the two funds. So we just moved it along. Doesn't affect the loan, doesn't affect the payments. It just affects what fund it's involved in. So, and reported on. So, any other business? Yes, Ron.
Mr. Chairman, I know we're regrouping here and reorganizing. What's your plan on the development and presentation of the 2019 budget? Next month, December?
2019 budget's coming out today.
Today. Okay, thank you.
Okay. RDC?
Maybe the RDC or the RPV?
No, you're making me strain on these actions. The Regional Planning Board.
Regional Planning Board's coming today. RDC, we're still trying to figure out some finances there.
Very good.
But I can tell you the RDC will not put a strain on most things. That will be funded out of the USDA funds, interest funds, so we'll go from there.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I'd like to go into adjourn the Regional Development Corporation meeting and open the Regional Planning Board meeting. And let's all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I need a roll call, please. Someone help that pass out this information, please, so she can. Thank you. Now you can do a roll call.
Rodney Brown. Pete Keenan.
Pete? Here.
Patty Waldron. Here. Harry McManus. Kimberly Davis. Al Roscoe.
No.
Charles Harrington.
Here.
Ron Jackson.
Here.
Mike Marnell. Randy Preston. Mike Diskin. Chris Garrow. John Fry.
Here.
Christy Wilt. Here. Richard Wilt. Bill Farber.
Here.
Beth Hunt. Here. Tracy Eldridge. Dennis Dickinson.
Here.
Edna Frazier. Here. John Strauss.
Here.
Ron Conover.
Here.
Mike Swan.
Here.
Kevin Hajos. Matthew Hicks.
Here.
Richard Moore.
Yes.
Dave O'Brien.
Here.
Bob Henke.
Here.
Al Nolet.
Present.
Deb Donahue. Here.
Okay, good. We have a quorum. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as mailed from July 2018. So moved. Moved by Pete. Do I have a second? Edna? Any omissions, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to call on our treasurer for treasurer's report.
So if anybody didn't get the treasurer's report that I handed out when I got here, let me know and I'll get you one. I'll quickly run down through these bullet points. There's not a whole lot here. Basically, it says a lot has happened since we last met. Significant changes have been made as we continue to unravel the several layers of the organization. The attached balance sheet is presented to you in a simplified version as it is not compliant with GASB statements. For the purposes of this presentation to the board, I've removed all the deferred inflows and outflows required under GASB to give the members of the board a more realistic look at the current financial position of the organization. So basically, there's all these entries that a lot of you are probably familiar with at your county level that require to measure the OPEB, the future liabilities on retirement and health insurance, and it gives this big number that makes your financials look like hell. For the purposes of this board, I thought it more important that you take and get a real snapshot of what is our actual financial picture look like as we sit today. What's our cash, do we have the ability to pay our bills? That's the fiduciary responsibility that this board would have to the organization. So this is kind of a down and dirty version of what you're used to seeing in financials. The actual financials that are presented to the accountants and to the comptroller, they'll all be compliant, they'll all be GASB certified, and everything will be kosher. Not that this isn't kosher, but this is really a stripped down, bare bones, operational look at the organization. So I like to inject a little bit of humor, which my guys know is true time to time. So I've got three sections: the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is actually the biggest part, surprisingly. Chairman of the board has worked diligently with the interim director to review, correct, and develop new policies and procedures for the organization. In the short 5 weeks I've been involved with these two, there's been significant changes in how we do business, just on a day-to-day organizational level. Huge, substantial changes that were really no-brainers. So I commend them both on the work there, even though it may lend them in couples therapy in the near future. Several loan accounts that had gone delinquent have now been contacted and are back on track with plans forward. The cash position of the organization, as you'll see on the attached balance sheet, has gone from $3,400 in the bank on June 30th to $294,000 in the bank on September 30th. Huge financial change. The accounts payable process is now being administered by Washington County. It's improved the cash flow of the organization. It's improved the payment to vendors on a more timely manner. The September payments were over $60,000. The Regional Planning Board has actually already made the county whole for that amount on Monday, just October 1st. So the process is actually working fantastic. The vendors love it. It's working for the county. It's working for the organization. If there was ever a win-win, I think we're in it right now. The Planning Board was able to reimburse Washington County, which I just said. The loans receivable have dropped from $3.6 million to $3.2 million. So $379,000 of principal have been collected in just the third quarter of 2018. And again, that's a direct result of the active role that Dave and Beth have taken over the past 2 months. So that brings us to the bad. Unfortunately, in reviewing the loans and the processes, they've been able to identify certain loans that are at best questionable as far as their status. There'll be recommendations, I'm sure, from the chairman to write off certain loans. They've been noted on the attached loan sheets. They total $389,000. After a conversation with Mr. O'Brien today, that number may actually be $339,000 because the $50,000 loan that has not had any payments on it since it was loaned out, they've actually received a payment on. So that loan may be working back towards good graces again. So it'd be nice not to have to write that loan off. That'd be fantastic. So it's either going to be $339,000 or $359,000 or $379,000 $389,000 is what we're recommending. But that, like I said, that number might be $330,000. The comptroller continues to grace our presence for an extended stay. There'll be more reported on that as it becomes available. He obviously has a lot of questions about each loan portfolio and the contents therein. As we know more, we'll share more. And the ugly part of it, Dave alluded to. Right now, and Dave may disagree with me, but looking at it fiscally, the RDC is not financially viable at this time. If that $50,000 loan does go bad, you owe more to the USDA than is owed back to you. The current cash flow of the interest and principal payments back to the organization do not generate enough money to make the loan payments to the USDA. So there's a significant problem in the RDC in the repayment of that loan to the USDA.
So I'll give you, I was going to give the numbers later.
Okay.
The current loans due to USDA is $280,000. The current loans that we have on the books,
$268 to the USDA.
okay, is $263. Problem is we still have to pay for our independent audits and other expenses out of that money. So we just
Either-
won't be able to do it.
Either
So.
way, we're upside down.
Yep.
That's the reality.
Ron?
There's just not enough cash flow to sustain that loan fund.
Yeah, what stands behind that?
And I've only been involved for 5 weeks. I haven't had time to even, because my first priority was the operations of the RPB.
Mhm.
So the RDC has just recently come onto my radar. I haven't had any time to dig into. My best guess is that, and this is my best guess, I have no evidence. My best guess looking at the books right now is money was reloaned too quickly. Money was sent back out. And when you...
Actually, there's a simpler cause. Simpler cause is the fact we have to pay $50,000 a year to USDA. We've been making those payments since, I think it's 20 or 25 years. Do the rough math, we pay back already at least over $1.2 million. I don't have the numbers with me, about $1.2 million already. But that was that plus a 1% interest. So paying that down plus not using the interest payments properly to reduce expenses or to reinvest into the loan funds, and I'll talk about this in the RLF also, was one of the problems. So you see that, and actually I went back and looked at IRP, the number of loans that were bad in IRP before I will say June of this year was very little. There was 2 bad loans for all the loans that were made. That's pretty good record, but we have a couple that are questionable and a couple are bad. So that's what happened, is paying back the loans and not being able to refresh the loan funds. But that's exactly the way the loan fund was by the USDA was designed. And talking to USDA, because Beth and I had quite a conversation with them, they admitted themselves it was a bad loan program, and there were other ways to do it. The other ways that in some of the new USDA programs they require a loan reserve, cash loan reserve. The one wasn't required before, so that's sort of what happened. It wasn't the bad loans contributed, but paying back the loans was a big thing.
Yeah, but
Sorry, Al.
If we're charging 5, 6, 7, 8%, and we're paying 1%, there's still a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be talking about it more, I assure you.
Yeah, I guess my
Yes,
question
Ron.
was, I understand the problem, and I don't expect you to. I guess what I'm wondering is more the what if you can't make the payment? Do they take insurance in the car? Do they? What exactly is
So
standing behind the USDA?
let me answer that question directly. One, the only way to write off this money is to dissolve the RDC. The questions I have is what happens to the good loans in the RDC, which we could utilize to generate more revenue for the Regional Planning Board to reinvest in what we need to reinvest in. So that's what we need to look at, and it's going to take a conversation with a good attorney about how we could do that. We've got some ideas, but we'll go from there. But we have sort of a plan forward. The other way to do it is we've talked to them, and I've asked about workout programs, so we could make some payments or do it another way. Instead of the $50,000 a year, then maybe some sort of a graduated scale we can get to. So those are some of the options we're looking at. But are they going to come after my car? No, they're not going to come after anyone's car or house or anything here.
Yeah, no, I think it would be good if there was a negotiation process with them to get to the correct place as opposed to where we are right now. I don't know if that's part of the process. I guess that's what you're trying to figure out now.
Yes, still working through it.
Yep. Thank you.
So, okay. Sorry, Al.
And there's one punishment you missed. There is a punishment for defaulting on a USDA loan.
Yes.
Yeah, to Chairman Conover's question, not being an Esquire, my thought would be that the Regional Planning Board is on the hook for that loan if the RDC can't make the payment. So my advice would be that if you're $50,000 upside down already, and that's not counting any future expenses, with all due respect to the chairman, I understand your desire to keep the good loans, but it's going to be a money-losing proposition. So if USDA is willing to allow you to just write off the whole loans, fold the portfolio, and hand it over to them, I would recommend that that's probably the path you should take to limit the liability to the regional planning board?
We actually asked that question, and the punishment for the reverberations for USDA is they will not go after the RPB. They only will not fund anything for the RDC. We did ask that question.
They will be
Directly.
ineligible for federal funds
Yes.
if the reaper passes.
Yeah.
Only
Only RDC.
The
They do not.
RDC is not the RPB intentionally.
the task isn't Washington County
No.
And it will be,
on the paper.
that's the current directive from USDA.
So we have some work to do.
We
We have some work to do. There's a lot of work to do. We do have the money to make the payment in January. It's just June, so we've got about 6 months to work this out.
I would volunteer myself. If you need some help with this, Dave, please
Okay.
call me. I'd be
Will
happy
do.
to go wherever's needed to talk to whoever we need to talk to.
Then it might be worthwhile convening that director sooner than later, that RDC board.
Yep. Okay. Good.
So,
Anything else? Dennis?
Dave, I have a question for Al. What prompted these write-offs?
these were recommendations of the chairman digging into the portfolios.
So, in reviewing the loans, there are 7 loans from three different funds. Those loans add up to about $339,237. What caused that was Thompson's Garage, bankrupt, gone. Premier Travel, bankrupt, gone. Fat Food Kids, bankrupt, gone. Normandy Beach, bankrupt, gone. Thompson's Garage again. LG Forum Cafe had a Chapter 13 bankruptcy back in 2008. There was a workout program put in place in 10 years. He made so many payments, he passed away. And then the court settled it, and we ended up eating $1,620. Family Diner was a foreclosure of our property. So, unfortunately, on that one, we did not have a first mortgage, so we got very little out of it. We did get some out of it. So those loans have been on the books, and the bankruptcies actually took place, some of them 4 or 5 years ago. They were just never written off the loan portfolio. We weren't getting very much revenue from them. There was some we got settlements on, but that's what happened to all those.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
And so, Mr. Chairman, the bankruptcy proceeding, just for clarity of the record, the bankruptcy proceeding would have extinguished any position we had on any collateral.
that's correct. We did get settlements on some. We did have a loan, Thompson's Garage, where there was supposedly a lot of collateral left, but unfortunately one day, when we got keys to the building and went in, all the collateral was gone. So, it's one of the things we're looking at. So, sorry, Al, you finished?
So, Mr. Hicks,
Yes.
This whole list is planning board loans,
except for the one that says,
RDC
No.
loans.
this last page that says RDC IRP, very last page.
They're separated. Last
That's
one is
the
IRP.
That's only RDC loans. The rest are planning board loans.
The ROF 1, 2, and 4 are all RPB loans, yes.
Mhm.
So you're discussing getting rid of the RDC to satisfy
Yes.
loans that are in the planning board?
Nope,
No,
or just those loans on that last page.
just those loans on the
Just
last
that
page.
portfolio on the last page.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
And this balance sheet that I put together for you all combines all those loan funds totaling to the RPB, and then in the very last column separates out the RDC. So in full disclosure, you can see both entities on one sheet. So you have a total look at the RPB, and then a separate look at the RDC. And like I said, this is what I call a down and dirty. This is really just a, how we doing,
Mhm.
what we have coming in, what we have going out. And it's really where we need to be focused right now.
Overall, our loan portfolio is in better shape than it was 4 months ago. We've got 3 companies back making regular payments. We knock on wood, hope it continues. There's one person who was not making payments that we got a hold of, and he agreed to make monthly payments for a year and pay off the balance in 12 months. Right now, there is another one which we have collateral which far exceeds what the loan amount is. Next week, we'll be going to the our collection attorney, and going after foreclosure on it because we haven't had a payment on it in 2 years. We have 3 or 4 who are making their payments, but not on a monthly basis. They'll make 3 at a time, 1 at a time, skip a couple months, make another 3. So it goes in that cycle, but we're working on those to bring them up to date. Our total loan portfolio that is a good loan portfolio is $2.9 million. That includes RDC and the IRP. The write-offs total $339,237, and since June we've had $151,473 in loans paid off. So that's the status that RLF 1 has an outstanding balance. I'm using good loans, not the write-offs, because I took the write-offs out there because they shouldn't be there anyways. Is 1.1 for RLF 1, $455,600. For RLF 2, RLF 4 is $992,935, and IRP is $263,642. So they're getting more active, paying concentration on it. And one of the things we're talking about a little later is loan collection policy, and we are going to become more aggressive on loan policy.
And anybody that was trying to follow along on my sheets have all the loans in. He was giving you these numbers minus the bad debt.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to follow along, the numbers aren't going to match.
I just give them the good loans.
Yep.
Ron.
Yeah, so if I'm reading this correctly, and I'm not saying I am, the IRP, we're not showing any write-offs, but we're showing that we're unable to repay the USDA by some amount of money, which begs the question, how could that be if you're loaning the money at a greater interest rate than what you're paying to the USDA? It would seem to me there's only 1 or 2 answers to that that at least come to my mind. Am I following this correctly? In other words, that...
I think you're echoing my earlier statement.
Right. In other words, that you could have, if you were holding monies borrowed from the USDA...
At 1%.
At 1%.
Loaning out at 5%.
And either weren't loaning it, and say you weren't loaning it, and you were repaying, you were holding that money, but repaying it or using it in some other fashion, or repaying it but not from your revenue stream, then eventually you work your way into a negative position. You have to.
Ron, part of that is that extra 4%. That was used to pay the expenses. Lawyers' expenses, independent audit expenses. There are other prorated expenses from the operation of the office. So all those things added up. And right now, we have an auditor going through this thing. He's going to come up with a report. But right now, I think that this board should reflect on that and make sure we're making decisions going forward. And we will make alterations based on the recommendations from the auditor. But that's part of the reason it happened. I mean, we can go through all that, but I can tell you that...
That's why one of the early changes, Ron, is I've taken all of that telephone and internet and photocopier and their share of the bill.
Mm-hmm.
That's staying with the RPB.
Right.
That agency is now only paying its direct charges.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that for 2018 that's only $800, but you got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been going on. They've been paying a share of all the operating expenses since its inception. So again, there's been more outlays than...
Right, no, I think I understand completely now. I was... Initially, I thought that perhaps there were bad loans that...
but I still think
that required repayment.
It still warrants a deeper dive, I believe.
Okay.
I have a list of all loans. I haven't gone through them yet. I really... I'll do it and I'll show you what was gone out of the funds over the past life of the loans. So I'll let you know. But Harry?
So the USDA payment is $50,000 a year?
A year, correct.
1 year.
Almost 60.
And,
right?
and we're showing a monthly income
52 something.
of $35,000.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody pays. So how much?
Oh no, that's monthly. We have. You look at the monthlies time yearly.
Oh, okay.
That's a
okay, you're right.
principal plus interest.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
how much do we actually owe USDA at this point?
I had to figure $280,000. Al's got the exact figure.
It's 268,702.
And that would pay them off?
That's
Or
that's the balance on the loans, yeah.
is that what they want at this point?
We don't know, Harry. That's what we got to work on. We just don't know it. The problem is we don't have the money to make the payments when the payments are due.
Right.
We can make one more on time.
Yeah. So we'll go there, but
And in terms of the viability of the program, if I'm understanding all this correctly, the column that you really need to look at is the interest, because if the interest isn't equaling what you have to pay back to USDA, the idea is you don't pay them back. They gave you X amount of money to loan out into the community, and then they're charging you X amount per month. Well, the repayment's not the money they gave you back, it's the interest on what you're doing to pay them back,
So-
and then you just keep recycling that money with the general concept.
In a perfect loan fund, you would generate enough income to make a payment back so that you could reloan the principal.
Right.
We're
So-
not in that position.
Yeah, right, but so what I'm saying is, if in order to make the repayment, they use some of the principal to make the repayment, you still owe principal. In other words, that would have been a no-no.
It
So-
was a snowballing effect.
Right.
One
Okay.
one other thing, the top 4 loans on here, All Brands, Caldwell House, Coldman Farms, Jay's Heating, are ones who we are currently working with to make sure they come current and stay current.
Because while it looks like there was $56,000 taken in 2018, a
That's
lot
only-
of that has been in the last quarter.
Yeah.
So,
The bottom four loans are what I term as solid loans. The rest, I hope that Beth and we do our jobs to get them in, but they're iffies.
Well, my compliments, Mr. Chairman, to you and the staff and the treasurer. This has really been presented in a very organized and I think understandable way,
Mhm.
which is hasn't always been the case, as you know.
Mhm.
Good or bad, whatever the message is, it is what it is, and I think we're presenting it
The message is trending upwards.
with a lot
at
of...
minimum, it's transparent. It's coming in.
So, okay. Anything else, Al?
Not how we know.
Okay. I need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second. John, second by Pete. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
We need a motion to accept the abstracts as mailed out. Oh, wait a minute. Did you bring the abstracts, Al?
Did I bring them? No.
All right. Sorry. Your comments on reorganization just went away, Ron, because we forgot the abstracts. Did we mail them out? Sorry. Next time we'll have some more to go through. Sorry about that. Next is the adoption of the Champlain-Lake George Regional Planning Board. I believe all counties have accepted have passed the bylaws. Is that correct?
I think so.
I know Clinton has, I know Washington, Warren has, so yes, so we're good. So the memorandum of agreement as mailed out just establishes what our process is, reporting process, independent audits, finance administrative services. Will do. Pretty well lays it out. The one question I had that came up is that based on the contributions of each county in the MOA, we bandied about doing the total equalized taxable property value or the total assessed value of the county. My feeling was, I sent it out to everyone so they had a chance to look at it. My feeling is the fairest way to do it is a taxable, total equalized taxable property value. So that's what I'd recommend. I don't know, I talked to a few other people, they feel the same way. Anyone else have any questions or comments on it? Ron?
I mean, it may not work well for Warren, but I don't know how you would do this other than, I think what you're describing is full value. That to get apples and apples, you have to go to full value, and I think what you're describing when you say take it to equalize, what you're saying is that you take
Everybody goes to 100%.
everybody goes to 100%.
Correct.
You just don't know any other way to
Mhm.
do it other than
But the question is that on taxable value or on total assessed value? We have, go ahead, Al.
I think the only fair way to do it is on taxable. Maybe not so much Warren and Washington counties, but when you start looking at Clinton, Essex, Hamilton, their amount of non-taxable land can be substantial, and I think it would place an unfair burden on them to use their non-tax land as a calculation to their investment in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is that the danger of stealing somebody else's sheet is you didn't change it, it says total town on the sheet.
Total town.
This right here says total town.
Well, obviously I missed that one.
Plagiarism.
On the sheet. I'm sorry. That's how Washington County calculates their distribution of sales tax. So I stole their formula. Sorry. Any other questions or thoughts or comments or? Patty?
I think using the equalized assessed values instead of total assessed values ensures fairness to all counties.
Mm-hmm. So go with total equalized taxable value.
Yes.
Assessed value. Okay. Good. Any other comments on the MOAs? With that in mind, I will entertain a motion to accept the MOA as proposed. Ron makes a motion. Do I have a second? Second by John. Any further discussion? Al?
Mr. Chairman, just point of order, can I just respectfully ask that we maybe do show of hands so we know who's voting when we have votes today?
Okay. The yellow people can vote. The tan people can't vote.
Thank you.
On their cards, I'm sorry.
At least he called us tan and she called us brown.
So I have a motion, and this will have to go to each county for approval.
That's the last thing we have to approve.
As far as my list right now, yes. All right, those who can vote with yellow cards, please raise your hands if you agree. I guess I got to vote 12. 12 to nothing. So resolution passes. Would you please, I will send them out, have Beth send them out so you can take them to your county and run them through. I'd hope to get those passed by 1st January. Go from there. Did you want to talk about, oh, your budget's down there. Next is sexual harassment policy. John Stroh was good enough to incorporate the latest change in sexual harassment policy, and I would entertain a motion to accept the sexual harassment policy revised as mailed out. Unless, can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Motion by Pete, second by Edna. Do you have any changes, omissions, corrections? Ron was first.
Yeah, we just got, I assume everyone did, Essex County got the new one that the governor's requiring in every county and town. Is that reflected on this, or we're going to have to make further changes?
I'll let John Stroh address that since he was the leader in this.
Yes, as of yesterday, the state made updates to their updates.
Yeah.
There's a shot.
Yeah, and they want us to be compliant by October 9th.
Correct.
So I even looked at their updates to their updates, and what I put together for the Lake Champlain-Lake George Regional Planning Board is compliant.
Okay.
Although I'll work on making it up and update it further, but right now it's compliant with everything that they expect.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. Al?
John, is it your opinion that the members of this board are going to have to take the training that's required?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
I'll make the
Next is the appointment of Board of Directors Vice Chair. I will entertain a motion to elect a Vice Chair. Yes, Matt.
I move John Sproul.
Motion to nominate John Stroh. Any other? Do I have a second? Edna? Dennis? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. I do need an appointment of one additional member to the executive committee, and the executive committee will come and play and when we talk about the loan bylaws. So I do need someone. I would like someone from either Clinton or Essex County for the additional person on the board of directors, which is also the executive committee. Pete?
You interested?
No, Pete can make a nomination.
Yes, I would nominate Patty Waldron.
I'll second that.
Second. Back up for a second. Patty had agreed to serve on another committee, which we're going to bring up in a minute.
Yeah,
Because the executive-
no problem. I look forward to it.
You can't be on both. You can't be on both committees.
Oh, so I'm excited then.
Because you volunteer for the loan committee, no member of the executive committee can serve on the loan committee.
Okay,
So I'm going to ask Pete to withdraw his nomination,
can you withdraw the nomination?
I will.
and I'll look for another
I will
volunteer.
withdraw the nomination.
Whoever speaks first. Do you have a nomination? So Ron makes with Charles Harrington. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Patty seconds it. Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Congratulations, Charles. Moving on, adoption loan committee bylaws and processes. I did mail out a loan committee. Do you have an extra one? I lost mine. Thank you. A loan committee bylaws rewrite. Before we talk about this, I want to give you my personal overview of the loans. I would say that as we've gone through, I think everyone walked in from some information months ago and thought that every single loan was a disaster. I would say that probably 90% of the loans are good loans, paying loans, are responsive to people. There's about 10% we found that need some massaging and some strong arming to get them in there. I think that there are some issues that we need to address, and here's the list of issues. What we find in talking to some of the loan committee members and talking to other people who are looking at the loans today, the principal thing is lack of documentation. For example, we should have a list of who is at a loan committee meeting, the attendees, the discussion at the loan committee, what the person brought in, what they talked about. They should have a written documentation on business plans, on projections, on financial statements. The loan committees have documentation of the discussions during the loan committee. There should be documentation on collateral, what the assessed value of the collateral is or property value of the collateral is. The whole thing that we find, and we can't say whether it was done or not done. In some cases, both Harry and Tori have said we saw that documentation, we look in the file, it's not there. When we go back to audit those files to look and see what was there, we can't find the documentation. So documentation is the biggest thing. The second biggest thing is I struggle to find documentation of collection calls. I struggle to find documentation of where people were contacted, they're past due, or just a conversation every single year. There should be annual financial statements provided by each one of those. That has historically not been done as far as I can find out. Now maybe there's a wealth of different information filed someplace else, but I don't think Beth and I or other people looking at the loans can find that information. We need to put the process together work on the process so the documentation is in place. We need a firm collection policy, one that's followed. We need to adopt a policy of trying to visit these people or touch base with these people at least once a year, if not more. I know historically, and there's a couple other members here that have been on the Washington County LDC and know what we do in terms of follow-up, contact with people. We need to implement the same types of things here because Washington County LDC does not have the same type of issues that we have. I'm not bragging about Washington, well, I am bragging about Washington County LDC because they do a great job. Those are things we need to put in place here. Those are the things that we need to put in place, and Beth's going to talk about a new hire, which we hope is going to be part of that. But those are the things we need to pay attention to. Checklists, checklists, checklists. We need to make sure we're following up. We make sure that if we call George Johnson, who owes us $150,000, who was 16 days past due, and say, hey, George, what's going on? You know, everything all right? I'm not asking for a collection call. I'm asking for just a contact to say what's going on. And if he doesn't respond, then you can ask some questions, but it needs to be done politely. It needs to be done firmly. But most of all, it needs to be documented. So when I look, which I can't do now, to find out what loan collection procedures were taking place, we can document that because that's very important. And not only with other organizations I've been involved in who have done loans, it's always been the farther time you let people go and not talk to them and not contact them, the bigger your problem is. And we have some shining examples of that here. So I'm not trying to place any blame. I'm just saying that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. One of the things that I think we need to give some thought to is where our loan program fits into the bigger world of public loans. For example, are we there as a supplement to all the counties have LDCs or EDCs? Are we there to take, as a resource, to take part of their packages that they put together? Or are we a freestanding loaning entity that's loaning 100% for certain activities? I think we need to give some thought to that because I think it's important long term. I think it helps if a certain part of our resource is dedicated to the LDCs in Hamilton County, for example, then it becomes a lot more relevant to Hamilton County to this organization and what we do in the future. Whereas if we're more of a freestanding situation, then the question becomes, well, how do we come by the people that are asking us for money? Do we have material we circulate? Are we like a bank? Do we have how do we get the message out so they know that we even exist? A lot of people perhaps didn't even know that this loan program, these loan funds even exist. So I think some real thought needs to be given by the loan committee in terms of what it is that we're obligated to do under the USDA. I'm sure they had very specific things that they gave us that money to do. But also I think we need to think about where we fit into the bigger picture of economic development entities that exist at the county level. And my sense right now of everything is that that's a better role for us than to be a freestanding loaning entity. That's just my off-the-cuff impression of everything.
John?
Well, I think, Ron, to help you address this question, if you look at what we put down as the purpose of the RDC to be applicable to the Regional Planning Board, when we redid the bylaws for the RDC, we thought that we should put down the purpose. Exactly what you were saying. So if you wish to review, the purposes are stated and the purposes for the RDC, I think they'll get you in.
So the revolving loan funds from the economic development of, I can't remember its agency authority, but it doesn't make any difference, it's still EDA. We have a revolving loan fund program. It's a booklet. One of the things that we just got kicked back was our addendum was made in submitted in June, and you just got kicked back with a lot of recommended changes. That loan management program, that's our guidebook, tells exactly what the loans can be used for, tells us that RLF 4 is still a disaster program for Irene, and any I'm just stretching my memory, any loans from disaster to Irene take precedent over other loans. This does open it up. So we are rewriting it. The next meeting we'll bring that back for approval of the board before we submit it to the RLF. But it's pretty concrete until it gives us direction what we can do. I think that when we look at this, and is we need to regenerate the loan process, but get people in each county talking about this, advertising it, getting it out there. I know we've done loans in Clinton County. I know we've done loans in Hamilton County. I know there was Eisenecker's funeral home, which is out in there, Lowville, which actually was part of the permissible uses of the funds, surprisingly enough. But we need to get the word out there, and that's what we need to do, not only with the loan program, we need to do with everything we can do for Regional Planning Board for every county. And I think that as we talk about, Beth talks about where we think we can go and has suggested before, there's a lot more we can do to help counties out. And this is only part of it. But you're right, Ron, we do need to specify that. We do need to identify that. There are certain, my brother's a loan officer, but not only him, but everyone else tells me that if anyone comes into a bank today, they don't care how much money they got in the bank, they're not going to loan to restaurant businesses, period, end of story. So the resource for them is to come to places like this, and we should evaluate them all. But there are different ways to do it, to look at, so, but there are a lot of things we need to look at and pay attention to, and I hope the loan committee is up to the task with Beth helping out, as I get a dagger look from her. So, Al?
To Mr. Conover's point, a quick look at our loan portfolio. There's 36 loans in Warren County, 13 loans in Essex County, 5 in Washington County, 2 in Clinton, and none in Hamilton. So his point is very well made, that you want 5 counties to be invested in the organization. There should be maybe an understanding and an education that some of these, Clinton and Hamilton, hey guys, even though we're here, and can we partner with you to do some things that you need done?
Well, you could have, for example, you could have a certain percentage of your resource, but that particular loan program might only take up to 20% of a much bigger package of an eligible activity, which would include lead financing, which would normally come from a bank or something like that. That's one type of loan program. It's a supplemental kind of program. All the way on the other side of the spectrum, you do have, not many, I don't think, I'm trying to think of how many are out there that are freestanding 100% or close to 100% public loan programs. I mean, they're out, they must be out there. I'm just unaware myself of a lot of them that are like that. They normally just don't exist like that. And so that's where I think our EDCs or LDCs at the local level can be very helpful with advising us on what's really needed out there to help them do what they're doing at the county level, right?
So, Ron, I don't mean to bring up the Washington County LDC, but the types of programs we do are standalones, we do partnered loans, we do supplemental loans, so we run the gamut of it. It's really identifying and looking at every single loan on its own to figure out what's out there, and I don't know if that's something we want to take a look at, but that's one thing to look at. So it might be a combination of all that we have to take a look at. But mainly, if we look at the guidance of all these loan programs, is to look at the development economically. Does it save businesses? Does it maintain employment? Does it increase employment? So those are things that I think are priorities in all the descriptions of the loan programs we have as the priorities.
Well, I want to put this out there. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but, for example, those standalones tend to have upper limits. They'll do a small project up to $15,000, $20,000. But what they won't do as a standalone is they won't entertain something that if it went south would collapse the whole loan portfolio. In other words, collapse the whole program. So those are the kind of evaluations that have to be made that deal with what's the size of your portfolio, what's your real capability, and what is it that you're looking to accomplish with this. Now, some of it, you're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman, if it comes from EDA, they have very specific things that they give you the money for that they're looking to accomplish. Same thing from USDA. So there needs to be some balance that goes on here. And I suspect that we have participated in loan activities that involved our respective EDC.
Yes, I can verify that.
Right. And so to me that's like very fertile ground. And the reason I think that's important is I think it's very important. It helps the regional planning board be relevant to all of its members. Right.
Good. Thanks, Ron. Charlie.
Yes, one of the RLS Adirondack meat is located in Ticonderoga. This business was endorsed 100% by the agricultural community, but it was operated with total incompetence. And in this type of business, there's no forgiveness when you don't open and when you schedule animals for slaughter and the animals are outside the door, then that business has got no alternative but to close because the agricultural community will not tolerate it. Now, questions have been asked by the Board of Supervisors, Essex County, what's happening to this state-of-the-art business, and we have been told that there will be a change. IDA wouldn't go any further than that, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
We just found out about the status of the Adirondack meat. I should rephrase that. Beth and I just found out the status of Adirondack meat last week.
So you know more than what the Board of Supervisors.
Well, maybe not. We just found out that he's out of business.
Okay.
That was one of the things, one of the companies I talked about that we don't have documentation on. We were told by the owner of the business who contacted Beth last week, or vice versa, I can't remember which, that they've been in contact with with the previous director and kept them up to date what's going on. We find nothing in the loan files. He's still making some payments. Not regular, but he's promised he wants to pay it off, so we're working on it, so we'll see. More to come. But just to finish this discussion up on that, by next meeting you'll have the new rewrite of the RLF management plan to look at and digest, because we have to have it approved here before we submit it to EDA for approval or rejection again. So, but
Mr. Chairman,
one quick comment. When you partner with a bank, you know full well the bank's doing their due diligence. When you partner with an LDC or DDC at the local level, you can be fairly well assured they're doing their due diligence. If we're going to have a freestanding program that does 100%, then we have to have the capacity to be able to do the due diligence that's required for that loan. And which means you have to have the staff and you have to have the experience, the banking and lending experience to be able to do that. And so I've just put that out there that it's which is to address your point, which is one thing I just wanted to mention, is that we're not ready for it, but with the new person coming on board, we were considering approaching another organization who does it well to come and help train that person and train us too, and make sure we're covering that basis. And if you find out in the bylaws, the other suggestion is what I strongly agree with, is to get a banker that's on the loan committee who's looking at it from a banker standpoint. And one of the things I can say about the direction I want the loan committee to take is that they actually get in and review every single loan
before they come in from the meeting. And I know when I get loans to look at, I look at those loans and I will ask questions about those loans, and that's my personal feeling, that we need someone to help us, direct us in the right direction. Not to make decisions for us, but train us the good processes and procedures to identify the information that we need to do and the process we need to follow. And also, as I said, to get the bank around the loan committee, and I have a lead to get someone on there. I just haven't approached them yet. So you're absolutely right. Absolutely.
Summarize what he did is more dangerous if you go by yourself. You don't have the depth that these others, the banks and the other organizations have to put it in. Because you're less likely to get stung going with another group than you are going out by ourselves.
So here's the flip side. This is the devil's advocate. If a bank's involved, they're going to take a first position on every single piece of collateral they can get. We would end up with a second or a third position. Now, I have a friend who's an attorney who does work who says, you know what a second position on a mortgage is? You probably won't see anything. So that's one argument to take a look at. How do we broach that to make sure we have the collateral and adequate collateral to cover our loans? Al?
Dave, with the conversation that just occurred, is that loan that he's speaking of, is that now a questionable loan? That's $140,000.
Let's continue the conversation because we really don't know. This is a surprise to us.
Right.
Last week.
That's a big number.
I just want to say, he has been out of business for months. There was a write-up in the Sun months ago saying that the business wasn't operating anymore. So it's not something that just happened last week. It has been several months. So.
Only thing I'm saying is that we found out about it last week.
Right, I understand that. But, yeah.
We were told that the regional planning board was advised on it. We couldn't find any notes. So I do understand that. I actually thought it was longer than that, but I don't get the Sun, Edna.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? I'd like to move forward. Any questions on the loan committee bylaws? Matt?
7 members, 1 from each committee, 2 at-large. At-large yellow people, at-large tan people, at-large anybody people.
Well, I think if you put in there 2 members, if you put in a large agreement, it is advisable, if possible, that the Regional Planning Board solicit for these 2 at-large positions someone from experience in commercial lending and one with experience in accounting. So it doesn't matter what county he's in. I think that...
And outside this group?
Outside this group, yes. Yes. But if a great banker is part of the group, I'd take them, but... Yes, ma'am.
And the officers are... And by the way, these questions don't think I have any interest in being on this committee. I'm just asking because I'm reading this. Like negative interest in the answer. A chairperson and a secretary, then it says the executive director. Is that's the executive director, or there's an executive director of the...
It's executive director.
Director of the whole... Okay.
I mean, she's the person that's going to oversee all this and manage all this, even though she's got someone working with her.
So make sure. Thank you.
Make sure. Any other questions? Albert?
Dave, my only note on here, it was interesting that you mentioned the word checklist. I would really like to see an addendum to this, an actual checklist that the loan committee will literally check.
To live by.
The document, if there's 15 documents required, I want to be able to open up a loan portfolio and there's 15 checklists, literally.
You will have one of those.
Okay. But I'd like to see that as in here, in the document.
Mm-hmm. When you're done, we can do an addendum to include that. Any other questions?
No.
Comments? I'll entertain a motion to accept the loan committee so we can get this going. Bylaws. Motion by Dennis Dickinson. Do I have a second? Second by Edna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. With a note, we need an addendum.
Thank you.
Okay, I need appointment of loan committee members. So currently I have I'm looking for volunteers from counties. I will tell you the two I have recommendations from counties from. I have also have a volunteer from Hamilton. I have a volunteer from Clinton. So I need one from Warren, Washington, and Essex.
Oh, Harry, you'll do it, won't you, Harry? You'll do it, won't you?
If you asked me to do it,
I nominate Harry Booth from Washington County.
So two left. Warren and Clinton.
This is for the,
This is for the loan committee, loan advisory committee, yep.
This doesn't have to be a member, does it? It doesn't have to be a member of the regional planning, could be anyone.
Could be anyone. John? Okay.
There you go.
I don't hear any pushback.
He doesn't get a vote.
No.
Can't use this.
I would prefer someone else.
Those that think that's a good idea,
I'll
they
touch base with you later.
just double those time of those meetings.
Yes.
Someone from industrial development agency?
I'm not sure that's the best.
They could? Mhm.
Okay, whatever.
So can you get back to me in 5 days? Conference with your people up there? So right now I got, do you want to do the same?
Yeah, I mean, you can pencil me in, but let me.
I have to check something out, Ron. I have to go back and read our bylaws to see if you can.
Right. Hopefully they'll say no.
So,
but I'm flattered. But
let's.
I'd like to give this some thought. I'd like to talk to some of our finance people and give some good thought to this, because I think we're heading in a very good direction.
So I've got Christy, Patty, and Harry. I've also asked Christy if she would be the chairman of the loan committee, because she's had experience with the IDA and loans up there, so at least as a start. So without any further, that's what we'll look at. Okay? Al?
Dave, I was just looking at the membership, and this reads, one member shall be appointed from each of the 5 county members, from each of the 5 member counties from the Lake Champlain-Lake Regional Planning Board. So does that mean the appointments have to be a planning board member, the way that's worded? Because that would...
I did not take that way.
Because it would exclude Harry if that's the case, that's why I'm asking.
No, I did not take it that way.
Okay.
If I did, we need to fix that, because I didn't mean that.
No, I'm not advocating either way, I'm asking. I just don't want to step in it accidentally.
Is it from or by? Does it need to be...
Because it says, the one member shall be appointed from each of the 5 member counties.
Appointed by the board of directors of the LCRG. By, not from.
So I think that word matters.
Yeah.
It says by.
Like I said, I just don't want to step in it accidentally, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so with the body's permission, because we will need a loan committee meeting for a few things, as soon as we get the 2 members, I'd like to start that in place, and we'll confirm those members at the next meeting. Is that okay? Because we do have some things we have to talk about that I don't feel that Beth and I should make that decision, and I don't want to call a full meeting of the Regional Planning Board to make those decisions. I do want to notice that the Executive Committee, part of the loan committee bylaws say the Executive Committee will be a referral program for anyone over $100,000 for a secondary level approval, which is why that none of the Executive Committee can sit on the loan committee. Okay, where are we? This comes from we had a conversation with the EDA. They were concerned that our loan program was on moratorium. They would like that moratorium off. I know that we still got a ways to go, but we need their cooperation. So, and Beth can talk about what more she said, because I'm running out of steam.
About what Jen said?
Yeah, what Jennifer said.
So we spoke with Jennifer Slums from EDA, and she just said that they would like to see the moratorium lifted. They have, as Dave mentioned before, kicked back the RLF plan for some changes. I reached out to one of our fellow regional planning boards who also has a revolving loan fund and has the same management plan, and they have provided me with a copy of theirs. So we're not starting from square one, which is good with that. So we'll get that put together and out to you guys. But she is just looking for us to kind of keep moving forward with things. I don't know if I really left.
No, that was part of it. So.
Well, I understand that request, and I appreciate it. We still have at least 2 members of the revolving loan fund committee to get. We're still, I think, getting a handle on where we are financially. And hopefully we can get there maybe in by next month.
So the beauty of that, Mr. Stroker, kind of looking at his car talking to you. The beauty of lifting the moratorium is we don't have the ability to loan money anyway. So,
well, there's a little curveball here. The curveball is some of the loans we're dealing with need loan modifications. There's one we may have to consolidate 4 loans into maybe 1, maybe 2. With the moratorium on, we can't move forward to consolidate those loans.
We can't move forward without a loan committee is my point. So removing the moratorium to make EDA happy is fine because you can't do anything anyway.
The moratorium, I advanced it. I was thinking more in terms of new loans than it was management of existing portfolios. I mean, you have to manage what you have.
Which without a loan committee you couldn't issue anyway. So,
so what we're talking about here is to better define the term moratorium and say for the moment at least that applies to new applications. I certainly don't have any heartache with that.
Fair enough. There's several loans that are past their due date, paid off date. We need to re-energize those. So I'll make a motion. Can I get a motion, Ron, for that redefinition? No, you can't make a motion. Can I have someone else? Dennis, got a first, second? Second by John Stroh. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I also forgot that we have a loan collection policy that I sent out that talks about how we're going to go. The current one was 30 days you send a letter, 60 days you send another letter, 90 days you send to an attorney. We talked to our collection attorney. He says that at 90 days you don't want to turn it over to him if there's other options. The reason he said that was because attorneys are $160 to $200 an hour, and as we start that collection process, so he's recommended that we evaluate them in 90 days to figure out what we really want to do. Are the assets really there, what they are, make that decision before we start incurring costs. The policy I'm proposing is like I talked about earlier, in 15 days, we will make contact with the loan recipient. I'm bringing this down to one. It's also going to be based, is the person habitually past due? Is it maybe just a one occurrence? Is we contact them, talk to them, find out what's going on, see how we can help them. Keep the contact. If they promise to make a follow-up, if they say they're going to make a call, make a payment, follow up with that. Have a designated date to follow up. 30 days, same thing. Ask them what their plans are. Try and set a meeting with them. Come in and talk about things. We don't want this loan to get out of hand. In 60 days, we need to figure out what the plans are, or should we have to propose some sort of loan modification or some other thing to help them get over a specific hump. Maybe for some reason they had an event at the thing and they had to close their business for a short period of time to get over whatever happened. So those things we have to keep in mind and see if we can work with them so they don't get too far behind. But the more we know, the better off we are. Then after 90 days, 60 days and 90 days past due letters, contact, get them in, just more repeats. But more importantly is, as important, is to make sure that we document this information. We have a call with them, we document the date, the time, what was discussed, and the promises made. So that's a loan collection policy. Any questions on it? Al?
I know you're shocked, right?
I'm going to forget you're here.
This kind of left me wanting a sequel. I mean, I got to 90 days, and then it was like,
Then what?
then what? And I actually, that's what I wrote, then what? So I would like to see at least
So-
one more section that says,
Should
after the 90-day, after failure of the 90-day collections, steps may include, but are not limited to, you know, attorney collection, foreclosure of mortgages, and
So-
it can be decided by who? I would like to see a paragraph that says what happens after 90 days and who gets to decide that.
Well, should the borrower not make a separate arrangement to bring the loan current, the loan shall be turned over to an attorney for collection.
Doesn't say that.
Yes.
It says that on B.
B where?
4B.
Under 4B.
Yes.
Mine ends
Richie?
at 4A.
There's an updated version in your packet.
Richie?
Yeah.
Ron?
Let me see that. See, this is part of what I was saying.
I did add your wording, Richie.
I saw it. I think what you have here is great, but it's not complete. It's not complete, and I would agree, because, for example, when you have a position, I'll call it a third position, on a bigger package, and you don't get paid, the problem is you can force your position, right? And then you're correct, Mr. Chairman, the thing goes into bankruptcy, and then if somebody in their position gets little or nothing. But you're in a position to of leverage on the bigger package. You follow what I'm saying? Just because you're in a second or third position doesn't mean you can't enforce your position.
Your effect on the people above you may spark
The bank,
action.
whoever has the lead financing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my point is that this process gets, depending upon the type of loan, who's involved in the loan, the character, it's much more complicated than that. And a lot of times what happens is you get into when a loan becomes problematic, what happens is you negotiate perhaps like something that's immediately due and callable. In other words, you don't have to go through a foreclosure type procedure. The applicant allows for your position to be a more immediate position. It just gets a lot more complicated. So now if you're in the loan all by yourself, I think this type of thing maybe has more application. That's my only point.
Beth and I had a conversation with our collections attorney, and here's his recommendation. Let me just throw out an example. Lucy has a $200,000 house. We have a first mortgage on it. The loan may be $175,000. Okay. Doing the math, on a foreclosure sale, it may not bring enough for a payment of the loan. Lucy also has some $100 million of art. I'm being a little facetious on that one, sorry. But what the attorney's recommending is you have to assess each situation on its own. He sometimes recommends, he says, you may not want to do a foreclosure on that property. He said, you have to evaluate every single loan based on, do we have personal guarantees, do we have this, that, and everything else. He says, every loan's going to be different. He said, because there's another way to go about doing it that doesn't incur the same cost as foreclosure. And that's going after all the assets, going for a judgment from the court on all assets the individual has. He says, sometimes that forces payments faster than just doing a foreclosure, because not only going after the house, which most people know a foreclosure will take in New York State 6 years, or up to 6 years, is that you're going after their bank accounts. You're going after their stocks. You're going after their bonds. So while I agree with you, I think the discussion on each situation has to start with the attorney. Because some places foreclosure is not the right place. Sometimes it is. What he's saying is it's all based on. We have one single loan right now that is $150,000. The collateral on that I have found so far is about $50,000 on a piece of property. Are there other assets there? I don't know. So again, how do you nail it all down? I'm looking for recommendations.
Okay, this is a good start, okay?
Mhm.
I think the loan committee should meet and flush this out a little bit more.
Mhm.
Al talked about the next step, okay, what do we do? You can have dialogue with several attorneys if you wish, and they'll all have a different answer as possible action. But you need to have it in writing, what the different steps are gonna be for this organizations, and then the best thing to do is to make sure you document each time, so that we're in a more solid position, that we wanna pull the trigger, that we're ready to pull the trigger.
Dennis?
I sat for a short while on the Warren County LDC. I came out of business community before I was king of Lake George. It was appalling what they did with their loans.
Mm-hmm.
They were undersecured. They were really slipshod with their paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to realize when a person comes in and puts their house up for collateral, you may have to come back in a year or so and threaten to throw them out of their home for this loan. I don't know about you, that's difficult for me to put somebody out of their home.
Send me.
So I think it's key when you give these loans out that you need to get some security that you can liquidate and that you're willing to liquidate, and you have to make absolutely sure you have all the paperwork filed.
I had a conversation with Jennifer. Beth and I had a conversation with Jennifer, who's our contact executive at the EDA. And I said, I felt guilty. I said, we're going to write off $330,000 worth of loans. I said, I want you to know that. She said, so what? That's what these loans are for, is for risky projects. Now, I agree with everyone here. We have to make sure we have collateral, and we have to make sure we do our due diligence, but I'm not trying to be flippant, but that was the answer I got. I felt guilty about writing off $330,000 worth of loans, and she says, we understand that, and we expect it.
Well, apparently that is the situation. All I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to take a lot of flack from the public.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure this body shares that sentiment, sir.
Yeah, you really are. You give out a bad loan and don't get the money back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how
I'm not a proponent of giving out bad loans, by the way, but I would just...
Yeah.
Okay. Patty?
I'm just curious, we haven't talked about how we can ensure the success of these new businesses in the area. I mean, so that repayment would be logical, like if the loan committee reviews a business that, you know, obviously you don't think it's going to make it, or, I mean, how selective are you in the businesses that you think would thrive in an area, and are there any resources that you use,
Well,
like an economic developer, to see what would work and what wouldn't work?
well,
I'm new, so
I know,
I'm
it just
curious.
opens up the things we're not looking at. We should be looking at credit reports. We should be looking at personal references. We should be looking at assets, what their assets are. We should verify what they say the assets are. Somehow we can get that through personal financial statements. So there's different ways to do it. The reason for having a banker and an accountant on the loan committee is to help digest some of that information and put it in its proper perspective. So there's a lot of places to reach out, but a lot of these are small companies that have a great idea, and we have to value them on a one-on-one basis. Most bankers will tell you that they really loan to individuals, and so the loan committee meeting with the applicant and the series of meetings with the applicant, with the director, whoever's doing the loan process, are very important to help establish what that person understands, what they know, and if they really know what they're getting into.
So if there's no person or committee to say, actually, yes, that demographic for that business might work well, or might not work well?
I don't know, Patty. Yes, Al?
And I think this gives her question gives a lot of credence to Chairman Conover's original statement about standalone versus partnerships. I think the partnerships that he mentioned earlier makes those successes happen. You partner with LDCs and EDCs, and those people, when they're your partners, you get those answers that we haven't gotten in the past.
I've looked at successful programs, and successful programs use a combination of all different types.
And
I'm not trying to say we should not look at that. I'm just saying that should be one of the pieces we look at in a loan program. We shouldn't say we're only going to do this because we may have a $20,000 or $40,000 loan come in. Who wants to partner with us?
I'm not talking about just partnering the loans. I'm talking about building partnerships where you can pick up a phone and talk to LDCs. You can pick up the phone and call the Washington County LDC lady and run, you know what I mean? I'm not talking just about fiscal partnerships. I'm talking about true relationship building partnerships. We can only succeed with them.
See, you know, I've been doing this a while, and, you know, here we've been having historically low interest rates. So if what we're saying is we want to deal with people that are not bankable, now, you have to accept that statement. We're going to be dealing with people that are not bankable. Well, what does that mean? It means that they don't have the resources, the money, the collateral, the whatever.
They're high risk.
They're not credit worthy.
So, from my way of thinking, I don't want, if I were voting, I would never, and given the size of the portfolio, for example, I would never approve a $100,000 loan that was a standalone loan to anyone. To anyone. It's such a big percentage of our total portfolio, and you know, so if you're going to do like a really high risk situation, and then you put limits on it, you say, well, assuming you meet all other criteria, you know, I'll use your example, Mr. Chairman. They're opening a grocery store in a hamlet in a rural area that otherwise has to drive 40 miles to a supermarket. And if they had $20,000 to help them with the inventory, that they'd be willing to do that. Now that's a need that exists in a rural area that perhaps these young entrepreneurs might be able to respond to and serve. That is totally different than someone coming in and saying, I want a loan of $150,000 because I'm going to set up a wood manufacturing thing to make widgets. That is totally different. The justification is totally different. So what happens in these loan programs is somewhere along the way, the goals, it gets convoluted. The meaning gets lost. That's why I'm saying I think that well-meaning and thoughtful people need to sit down and really need to look at this and really need to say, what is it we're looking to accomplish here, and why are we doing it this way?
Okay, that's more to be discussed later. Beth? Director's report? We're going to redo it.
So in your packets, you each have a director's report. It's been pretty busy over the last month and a half. I've submitted the budget request paperwork to all 5 counties, so the people in your counties who should have that, or who are supposed to have that, should have that. We created and released a request for proposals for auditing services. So our current auditor was a 3-year contract. It's up after they complete our 2017 audit. And so I put legal notices in the Post-Star, the Press Republican, the Manchester News. It also got sent out through BidNet, which is a national site that sends stuff out, and it also went out through the New York State Small Business Development Center. So I've spoken to 3 companies thus far who have never done auditing services for us before that are interested. The RFP is on our website along with copies of the 2016 RPB and RDC audits and some questions that were asked with the answers. So the deadline for those to come in is October 10th. We created a title for a senior account clerk, and we worked with Warren County Civil Service. They canvassed the senior account clerk list that they had. We got responses and interviewed and have hired. So I hired a woman named Carrie Akush, and she comes to us from the city of Glens Falls, and she will be starting October 15th. I also created a title for a senior planner. We specifically called it Senior Planner LCL GRPB because the tasks don't fit the usual senior planner title that a county would use. So I created that and submitted it to Warren County Civil Service, and they're going through their process to make sure that it adheres to all civil service laws. Updated all the information on our federal reporting systems. That doesn't sound like a lot of work, but trust me, it was. So we are good to go there. New usernames, new passwords. We've made all of our federal partners aware of the staff changes. So that's all good to go at this point. Al mentioned we kind of established methods for working back and forth between our office and Washington County, who's doing the payment of our bills on a weekly basis. So I think we've got that pretty well down to a well-oiled machine, making that happen. I presented at the Hamilton County Board of Supervisors meeting. I was also part of a NYSARC director's call. NYSARC is the New York State Association of Regional Councils. I have, for the past 10 years, participated in their water quality program calls, and so now I'm also part of the director's calls. In terms of economic development, we had 2 Northern Border Regional Commission grants awarded in our area, Town of Crown Point, Town of Inlet, and there was some paperwork that we needed to do on our end to ensure that they got their award paperwork and they could move forward. So we got those out to the town and into the feds, so they should be good to go. I also submitted a reimbursement request to EDA under our planning grant. So I'm working with them to see if there's a way that we can increase the allotted amount of match that was previously committed to the program. We now have more thanks to Washington County, so I'm trying to work with them to see if we can get that wrapped into the program at this point. This is the end of our 3-year agreement with them, so pretty soon they'll be sending something out for another 3-year program grant agreement, so I'm waiting to look for that. The New York State DEC grant that we get, the 604B funding that we call our baseline program for water quality, is actually a competitive grant program that turns into a 4-year contract. That is up at the end of March, so right now the RFP for the new one is out. So we have to write and submit that by November 14th. Lake Champlain Basin Program grants are out as well. We usually submit 5 to 7 of those and get funded about half, and that's how we do a lot of our water quality projects around the Champlain Basin, so we'll be doing those. I organize the North Country Stormwater Trade Show and Conference, so this year it is October 18th at the Highland. I've been invited and have been sitting on a panel down at the DEC. They are updating the MS4 permit and have asked people who are part of the MS4 programs within their communities to come kind of help them craft some of the changes. So I've been down in Albany. We meet about every couple weeks to go over parts of the permits. We executed the contract with NUEPIC for an Isle Lamont watershed management plan, which is up in Clinton County, so we have to start on our QAP, our Quality Assurance Program plan for that. Did a budget amendment for one of our WQIP grants. This month was the end of a quarter, so a lot of quarterly reporting. Still meeting on and working on the Champlain-Lake Watershed Management Plan addendum, and I've attended and spoken at a few things over the past month. The Adirondack Lakes Alliance, we had a legislative tour up in Saranac Lake for Quickney, and we went around to some of the projects that the grants have implemented, and I spoke on all the different kinds of funding that we've utilized to put those things in the ground. The loan program, Dave really went over it, but we have established a new contact logging system to just, and it's really simple, but just a phone call was made, this is what was said, here's what we're going to do going forward kind of thing. And I updated all the UCC filings for 2018 and updated the logging system for that as well. And AGFTC, I provided comments on the long-term control plan, and Aaron and I have worked to update the reimbursement procedures, which I think have gone from a couple weeks to complete down to a couple days. So that gets the funding in from DOT and quicker.
Aaron?
Hi, Aaron, AGFTC. What's the AGFTC long-term control plan? I don't know
I was thinking wastewater treatment plants when I wrote this. No, your plan you just released, that long-range plan, sorry.
I'm concerned when people have control plans.
No, sorry. Long-range plan. I
Thank you.
spend too much time worrying about wastewater treatment plants.
That one got my attention.
So that, does anyone have any questions about what we've been doing over the last couple months?
What
So
do you
that-
do all your spare time?
So something I wanted to talk about really quick was a staffing plan for 2019 and just go over some of the positions that I mentioned earlier. So as I mentioned, we have a senior account clerk coming in. Her priorities are going to be to start on doing a lot of the loan tracking and the documentation and reporting, processing the invoices and vouchers, working with AGFTC, Washington County, Warren County payroll, getting them all the things that they need to keep the office moving slowly. Carrie has a breadth of knowledge from the different positions that she's been in. She's been at SUNY Adirondack and at the city and a couple of departments there. So she is well-versed in municipalities and how they work. She also has experience in helping run events and organizing events, which we do a lot of trainings in our office, so it'll be nice to be able to give her that. The one thing she's not familiar with is grant management, so that's something once we get some of the more priority things that need to get underway earlier, I will be teaching her grant management, but I think through her knowledge, and she seems pretty excited to learn new things and to do new things, so I think that she'll be a really good addition to the office, so I'm excited to have her come in.
Is that a full-time position?
It is a full-time position, yep. I mentioned that I created a job title for senior planner, and I sent it to civil service so they can do their thing with it. I would like to have a person on January 1st, 2019. So I just wanted to kind of go over some of the funding streams that we already have in place that would help fund that position. So I mentioned there's the DEC 604B water quality program. We also have an Upper Hudson River Watershed Revitalization Plan grant. There's $45,000 in that for Regional Planning Board staff to actually author the grant, the same as we did with the Lake Champlain one. So that needs to be done next year, and that's already in place. The Isle of Mont Watershed Management Plan, there's $34,000 in there for Regional Planning Board staff time to do the work and write that plan. So that's already in place. We have some administrative contracts already in place, one with Washington County, and one with Quickney for a WQIP for admin, but there's also work that needs to be done in that one as well next year. If anyone's seen our roadside erosion report for Lake Champlain, we're updating it. The soil and water districts have done the work this year. Next year we compile and create the document, so there's funding in for that staff time for that as well. So that's work that needs to get done. We've promised was going to get done to several people. So it would be nice to have a person to help out with that if possible. Potential grant work, so the top 5 I've listed there are CFA applications that were presented or that were submitted this year. We'll know by the end of this year whether those were approved, accepted by the funding streams or not. If they were, we have administrative agreements with the entities who those were submitted through, so should they be awarded, we will then be doing the administrative services and funding will be coming into the organization for that as well. I also mentioned the Basin Program grants. That's where we get a lot of staff time money to do projects here and there, so we'll be putting some of those in anticipation for awards in 2019. And then there's future grant work. There's things that I mentioned the last time we talked that I really would like our organization to get into, one of them being EFC's WIA program. There's a lot of money in there for wastewater and drinking water upgrades. Bridge New York is also something. There's going to be a lot of work with MS4s once this new permit is released. This is the biggest update to an MS4 permit in probably the last 10 years. It has the most new stuff that they have to do. And whenever an MS4 has to do something new, I am the first person they call. So there's going to be WQIP money out there from the DEC to make that happen. That's something that we've been pushing them pretty hard, is that if they're going to increase requirements for municipalities, they need to help fund it. So hopefully there will be a lot of opportunity for funding with our organization assisting the MS force. The state, in terms of environmental, the state is going really into infrastructure asset management, source water protection, and flood smart action plans. So that's something that I'm keeping an eye on now and would be...
Quick question for you, Beth. I know I think in the last 3 years you've maybe written 2 WQIPs for Washington County, done the actual CFA application for us. Do you think that by adding the senior planner, you may be able to offer some limited grant writing services to the 5 participating counties?
Absolutely.
Because that is certainly, I don't want to speak for my board, but from a staff perspective, from Washington County, that's something we would very much be interested in.
Yeah.
Especially with the compressed nature of the CFA process, it's just too much for us to do with our limited resources. So if we could lean on you for that, that's something I personally think would be very valuable to us and maybe to the other counties.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ron?
Yes, I will write grants for you.
Yeah, I think strategically, I think that what we need to do is have a core staff that's funded with predictable, known revenue streams. Then those grants that are secured, because they're not all comprehensive grants, some are annualized grants, they're done for specific projects for specific periods, then you can envelope out to staff appropriately for those grants. Which brings me to my question is, I looked at your 19 budget and the revenue streams. It might be a little premature, but on the revenue streams, for example, are the revenue streams you're reflecting I would assume on a scale of 0 to 10, in terms of likelihood of receiving them, they're all 10s. In other words, that you would expect the increase in, for example, the EDA planning grant from 35 to 70. That's a lock. That's going to happen. You've been given the indicate. You know that's going to happen. It's a 100% situation. And then, and I think it's important, therefore, as we look at the revenue streams, that we know we're going to get to 347, and then if we want to staff to the 347, great.
So
we shouldn't speculate too much on the income stream on grants, whether we think we're going to get them or we're going to apply for them, whatever, because a lot can happen. Maybe you get them, maybe you don't. There's much can go on. So I would hope that you share that same thinking.
Yeah.
In terms of the budget.
Yeah. So in terms of the budget, you'll see that I have the full-time environmental. Well, it's environmental planner on here, but senior planner. What I'm suggesting that we do here and talking about a staffing plan is all reflected in the budget. I have lived. I
think Beth can better confirm than anybody that anybody that plays in this world knows that when the funding dries up, your job dries up.
Right.
That's a known in her world. So people who take positions that are grant funded understand that they're actually vested in making the grant successful because their job depends on it. They know that going in.
So my
that's
position.
Not really my question, because that is your statement is predicated on the fact that you have a grant.
So,
but you're not budgeting and staffing on that grant before you receive it, because you don't even know you're going to receive it.
Right.
What I'm saying is...
Right, but you have to...
Known, but they're not known forever.
Yes. Oh, no, that part I understand.
Yeah.
We do the same thing in Warren County.
Yeah,
We'll tie them. I just want to make sure that I'm the last person going to tell you how to run a 342 operation. You're the director, and you're supposed to know how to do that a lot better than I do. My job in terms of oversight is to make sure that that 342,930 is backed up by 342,930 of revenue that we know for a fact is going to be there. Not that we speculate, but that we know is going to be there. And if some of that revenue is probably going to be there and it has a little hope behind it, it shouldn't be in the 2019 budget at the moment. It should be out of there, and the revenue should be out of there, and then the expense should be reflected downward up above them. And we shouldn't speculate too much, because for this reason, I don't want to have to go into the loan program revenue stream more than we already are, and I sure as heck don't want to come back to my board of supervisors and ask for more money because the 2019 budget's been exceeded, right?
So I think that in talking with Beth when we developed this budget, I will say she did a lot of it. She made recommendations based on her 10 years of experience, what she's seen in forget loans for a second. What she's seen in grants coming in, what she sees in grants that she can fund, she's looking at, I think 75% of her position will be funded by grants. Was that it, the number? And based on what she's currently doing, she can shift off to someone else. She feels that at the very least, the senior planner would be fully funded.
If the revenue...
Based on the revenues that she sees coming in.
If the revenue...
What we also did was put EDA, EDC, which one was it? EDA. Position in there is phasing in the middle of the year, potentially, but that's going to be based on, do we have the revenues coming in? Is everything firing the way we think it's going to fire? In terms of, are we getting the grants? Are we getting other projects? I think there's soil and waters and other places we can look for additional revenue and assistance. So I think there's a lot of good ideas here, but I'm comfortable at least with the current assistant that we're bringing in and the senior planner in Beth. She has those well planned to be covered.
Yeah.
The speculative would be
I'm not even
EDA.
on the expense side. I want to be as supportive as I can be in terms of the program. I just want to make sure that the revenue that's backing up this plan is there for 2019.
Yes.
If we say EDA's revenue is going from 35 to 70, that we know that that EDA revenue for 2019, January 1 through December, is $70,000. And we know that's going to be there. We're not anticipating that we're going to apply and that we're going to get funded. That it's definitely going to be there. And I assume, for example, some of the other stuff like AGFTC, if there was heartache over that number, that would have been vetted before now. When I see county allocations, well, the counties pay up and pay what we hope they're going to pay, then I would hope that would be there. When I start seeing planning grants totaling $135,000, I want to make sure that $135,000 is going to be there. That it's not something we're hoping to apply for and hoping to get. It's going to be there. That's what I'm saying. Because otherwise, we should reduce the operating budget to our core expenses based upon what we know we're going to get. And then if we get the other grants, then we envelope out at that time to complete those programs and missions. That's all I'm saying.
So I think part of it, Ron, is that EDA grant, that's $70,000 every year. That's actually $140, isn't it?
Well,
we have
70 local match.
We have to match 70. Our problem with getting to the 70 was we were paying so much out, we weren't getting in-kind services. We're going to get from the treasurer's office, we're going to get from other places where we have that in-kind services. We pretty well think that we're projecting we've got that $70,000 covered. So instead of getting $35,000 like we did in previous years, we're going to get to 70. I think AGFTC.
You answered my question. That was my question.
Yeah.
That we're confident we're going to receive that revenue.
Yeah.
That answers the question.
And I think AGFTC, that's really a pass-through to us.
Right. No, I assume if there was an issue there, it would have been vetted long before it did our job. So.
If you don't spend money, we don't pay the bills.
No,
if you spend money, we pay the bills. So that's simple as that, isn't it, Aaron?
Not quite, but yes. We've agreed to fund the clerk position at 40%. I caveated to that I don't know if I can sustain that year after year after year after year. We might have to look at a 20% arrangement, only because my funds are going to dwindle over time. I'm under pressure to spend down my carryover. Our funding's flat, about $350,000 in new money. I'm into some external staff sharing relationships with transit and with Warren County that need to be sustained as well. But I let Beth know that, yes, 40% this year is completely doable. I have a surplus. We need clerk assistants. I don't know if I need 40% clerk assistants year after year after year. We can revisit that later, but for now, that money is more or less here.
Can you agree with the $5,000 increase in the host agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, that's your question.
Our budget is on a different cycle, so it'll be until March, when this stuff is formalized in an AGFCC work program, but we all know these expenses going in, then we'll budget for them. And we're not, the MPO is not short on revenue right now, so we can accommodate these expenses.
So the last thing that David alluded to would be an economic development coordinator. Like you said, if everything kind of goes the way we hope it's going to go, it's a position I would really like to explore about halfway through next year. And so they would be really the person to oversee the loan program. They'd be the keeper of the SEDS, the updater of the SEDS, the updater of the revolving loan fund program plan that we have, and really be out there helping do some economic development work in terms of doing like more regional planning, which is really what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be planning on a regional basis, on a 5-county basis, looking at our 5 counties and seeing what we can do together to help build the region as a whole.
That's why it's at 22.5.
Right, because it would be half a year if.
Okay.
So that's the plan on that. So.
And I think after I've looked at a lot of things that happened years ago, you should see all the economic development and plans and grants that the Regional Planning Board was doing. We actually had 4 or 5 people doing this stuff. Then it turned into 1 person doing it and 2 people doing the loan, which is the wrong balance. So.
Now, my only other concern would be, right now, Warren County upfronts those dollars. I just want to make sure from a cash flow point of view that your sense of the cash flow on this operating condition is, you feel good about the cash flow.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Washington County is out front in that money.
That makes you feel a whole lot better. That makes me feel even better.
So, Ron, so you got all your questions answered. So,
yeah, no.
Realistically,
And I pay you.
realistically, we need to shift the focus to planning and water quality and different things like that. So, anyhow.
There's a lot of federal money out there that having people to be able to go out and get and bring back into the region is what we really need to shift the focus back onto. So looking at the budget, and I know we've been here a long time. So some salaries, director, senior account clerk, again, that's split next year with AGFTC, which is why it's only at $24,000. Budgeted for a full-time environmental planner for all of next year. A full-time economic development coordinator coming in halfway through the year, the fringe numbers, and then really the rest of it is the bare minimum of what we do. So it's insurance, it's workers' comp, it's our rent to the town of Lake George. Our accounting has been decreased significantly since we have, we're no longer using Sefco to do our accounting, and now we're using Al, and he's a lot cheaper. I didn't say you were worse, I just you're cheaper. Again, our auditing, we have to do an independent audit every year, so we have to budget for that. Credit reports and UCC renewals are, we get charged every time we run a credit report. We get charged, $40 every UCC renewal, so that's kind of in there. Our website fee is $460 a year. Technology assistance is bringing someone in if there's something I can't figure out. And then our general operating expenses, lights, paper, phone, internet, all that, about $10,000. Travel and training got bumped up significantly with the anticipation of more staff going out and traveling and doing training, bringing us to $342,930. County allocations we talked about, the EDA planning grant, we have 70 available to us as long as we can match it, and Al and I and Dave have been working really hard to get up to that, and we will. Our 604B planning grant that comes in, the Water Quality Grant Administration are already things that we have in lockdown, grants that are already awarded and work that already needs to be done. The interest from loans, the town of Scroon, RLF, we get some funding from. Northern Borders Administration, we get some funding from as well, and then the host agency agreement bringing us to $347.
Okay. I want to talk about county allocations for a second. As we've talked about earlier, we have been relying on the interest from the RLF funds to pay bills. We need to start shifting that. Some of it's going to be through new grants, through new sources of money. The other is looking at the county allocations and the splits. So it's not an expectation this year that the counties increase their allocation, though it's always appreciated. Washington County has proposed raising their allocation to $8,500. for the coming years. But I just want to give a sense in this budget, if we don't get the increased county allocations, we can cover that through using more interest that I'd rather not use. I'd rather put in a loan program. But I wanted to set up that in the future, we're going to look at going to ask for increased allocations from the county. And I don't think the allocation has changed. I went back to 1970. I think it was $25,000 in 1970. And it still was roughly 25 to 30 over the past years. Sometimes it went down, sometimes it went up based on county budgets. But I'm just setting the expectation. So I'd like to take this back after we move it forward to the counties and get the county's feedback and hopefully get that in by the next meeting, which we'll talk about in a second. So any other questions on the budget? John?
Just one. Do we have a fund balance? Do we have a cushion built in other than the difference figure? Do we have a carryover?
Not currently. Ish, maybe.
That's not good.
Well, it's not good, but you know
if you look at the operating fund by itself, there's not. When you look at the organization as a whole, which includes the RLS, it's a rosier picture. I think within the next 12 to 14 months, you'll see a much better overall picture of the organization. I think there'll be a different discussion for your 2020 budget because you will, if things stay the way they're going now, you will be in a better financial position for your. But right now, if there truly is a surplus, that's a good thing for the organization. We have to turn that corner before we can start doing some of the right things.
Aaron?
Unfortunately, we're having to eat a lot of the interest now that should be turned back.
Reinvested.
I had prepared a report under the director's report.
Okay, sorry.
I don't need to go through that in its entirety. What I would like to mention is that we do have an AGFCC policy meeting next week, Wednesday, 10 o'clock, here in the public library. If you're a voting member of that committee, please come, please contribute to the forum so we can get our long-range plan approved. That's the core document of the MDO. We need to have that in place if we're allowed to do anything else with capital and planning projects. Again, Wednesday, 10 o'clock, policy committee, so that's our chief elected officials, the voting body of the MPO, Crandall Public Library. I also wanted to remind people of an illustration of the value of the process. In August, we awarded over $5 million in capital projects back to the county and the city of Glens Falls through competitive local program solicitation. Those include pavement and bridge repair as well as new bicycle and pedestrian projects. So your contributions to that ongoing process are yielding results coming back to the municipalities, and encourage you to keep up with that. That got no mention in the paper. I saw that Warren County had a couple of projects. There was no attribution as to what the funding source was. That's typical of AGFCC. Unfortunately, we're a little bit low profile. I don't need my name in lights, but I do want you guys to know what you're supporting when you're carrying the MPO.
Appreciate it.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
But the requests that were made to the 5 counties this year was the same funding as last year.
That's correct. That's correct. If anyone wants to volunteer more money, we'll always take it.
No, I understand that. I just want to be, when I talk to them,
Okay. Can I entertain a motion to adopt the operating budget? John Stroh, second. Matt Hicks. Any other for discussion?
Just the county contribution that you're showing in the 2019 budget, is that actual? Or is that, I see it's increased over the 25.
It's hopeful. It would just put in it. We can cover it if we don't get it. But I just want to start the mentality that we need to shift away from using 100% of our interest to fund the activities.
Yeah. I'm uncomfortable reflecting in a 2019 budget revenue that may or may not, especially that type of revenue that may or may not arrive. I just think that I'm uncomfortable with that. I think if we ask the county for 25, then we should reflect the 25. And if we get more, great. But what I don't want is, I don't think what you want is
So right now, to make this budget, we just have to change them, take it from county contribution to interest.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I just don't, I
You
don't
do the math,
want
Al?
a message to the counties that have been so patient and been so supportive that we're anticipating something that may or may not happen.
Al?
So, Chairman, would it be appropriate to defer this to the December annual meeting after the counties have passed their budgets and we know the numbers?
Well, we have to take this budget. The budget has to go to the counties for approval. If we wait until the last part of November to send it out, we're not going to be successful in getting an approved operating budget for the first of the year.
This budget has to go back to the counties to be adopted?
Yes, sir. Read your MOA, which really hasn't been adopted yet.
Even more reason that number needs to be the exact number that I'm sure has been included in all of our budgets thus far. I mean, if it's more, it's more, and that's not a bad thing. And if you can reduce, you might be better off reducing, phasing your staffing plan in a month or two later and reduce your expenses. Then if you get the revenue, you can always accelerate later. You could accelerate the hire later.
Well, I'm going to recommend we move the county allocations 25,682, raise the interest from loans to 101,818 as potential interest, then we'll make the adjustments as they go along. All right with everyone? John?
Do you agree to the amendment you proposed?
Mm-hmm. Well, I got an amended motion, so I need a second. Richie? Aaron?
Just clarification on the AGFTC expenses, those may change, but we're 100% in and out. So whenever the AGFTC expenses will be reimbursed to the planning board 100%. So not really for this body to set the organizational budget for AGFTC. Those numbers are going to change. I don't know what they are. They're predicated on state fiscal year. I haven't given allocations yet, but I do know that flat from last year is the same assumption, and that's what we're carrying forward.
For clarification purposes, I'm glad you brought that up. We are not adopting the AGFT budget because it's whatever they spend, we reimburse, so there's no budget. So we're not adopting that. I'm sorry we got to that conclusion. I didn't mean to be.
I'd like to use split amount on here.
Well, it gets really confusing because AGFTC really inflates the budget of the regional planning board, and so as was noted, we don't really vote on the budget for AGFTC, we vote on the budget for us. So from now on, in the past it's all been a big lump. From now on it will be kept completely separate.
No, I like this presentation.
Yeah, this is a good way to present it. This is an improvement over the past.
So I need a motion.
Vote on the motion.
Is everyone in favor of the amendment? Aye?
Aye.
And the original amendment as amended? Original motion as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Good. Thank you. Now, I will say in public that Beth has been very instrumental in the loans. She's been very instrumental in the planning. She's been very instrumental in taking her knowledge to move this organization forward. Without her, we wouldn't have anything. And she has the intelligence, the knowledge to carry us forward with the guidance from the board and from other people who contribute to help her. So I just want to thank her for her efforts. I know she's appreciated. And other than that, I would like to entertain a motion to enter an executive session to discuss personal matters. Motion by Richie, second by John Fry. All in favor?
Aye.
So, excuse me, there will be something. I'll ask Chris to stay. Harry, you can stay if you want. You're part of this.
I think it seems like you have a pretty good location here. It's certainly very accessible, and we're not going to find any other that is as accessible as this is, so I think maybe stay here.
It makes it good for me. I'm not going to argue with you. I'd just like to share the wealth. Is that a consensus? Do it here? We'll shoot for 1 o'clock, so we'll have it earlier. Okay? Good. Anything else come before this august body?
Move to adjourn.
Adjourned.